What's up, everybody on YouTube? AJ Russ back to discuss another video, and today we're going to be talking about the games around the NFL Week 5. The season is already going by pretty fast, and there was a lot of good matchups from primetime games and surprising wins around the league. But before we get into that, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you subscribe, and turn on post notifications. I post videos about sports, lifestyle, and pop culture on my channel. So with all that being said, let's get into NFL Week 5. So of course, we always talk about Thursday Night Football first, and that was the game between the Chicago Bears and the Washington Commanders. The Bears surprised everyone, getting their first win of the season, winning 40-20, and DJ Moore absolutely went off. He went ballistic, had 8 receptions for 230 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Really went crazy. And of course, Justin Fields, he completed 15 out of his 29 completions on the game. Not that efficient, but he still played really good in the past couple of weeks. He's had his best couple of games as a NFL quarterback so far. Had 282 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. That was a really good win for the Bears. For the Commanders, they had chances to come back in the game, but that's really just a bad loss and a wash that you want to bounce back from going into week 6. The next game that took place in the AFC was between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills. Another global game. Jacksonville won that game 25-20. They really are the global team in the NFL. The Bills, they had multiple opportunities to win the game, and really the Jaguars, they never really just dominated in this game. They just took the lead at the beginning and just were able to hold on. Trevor Lawrence had 315 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Josh Allen had 359 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Also had a rushing touchdown as well. Stephon Diggs had 8 receptions, a touchdown, and 121 receiving yards. I feel like this was a loss for the Bills that you could have saw coming. I think that they'll be okay though, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, they needed this win equally as well after losing to the Texans a couple weeks ago and getting a win last week against the Falcons. So both teams are for sure going to be AFC contenders, and it was really a good win for the Jaguars. We can go through some of these games real quick. The New Orleans Saints embarrassed the New England Patriots 34-0 at Gillette Stadium. The Patriots have lost 2 games in a row, only scoring a total of 3 points, being outscored 72-3. In my 21 years of life, I've never seen the Patriots this down bad. A lot of questions for sure up there in Foxborough in terms of if Bill Belichick should be the GM and coach at the same time, and really if his coaching legacy is taking a hit right now. After letting Tom Brady walk in 2020, the Patriots, they have been very mediocre. Matt Jones has been struggling, and of course you can put some of that on him, but last year in year 2, he took a step back because they didn't have a true offensive coordinator there. So a lot of questions up there in New England, but a good win for the Saints. The Indianapolis Colts were able to defeat the Tennessee Titans 23-16. It was a really good win for the Colts. Unfortunately, Anthony Richardson left the game with a sprained AC joint. Some people thought it would have been a collarbone or something like that. So thankfully for the Colts organization, it's not too serious, but he'll probably miss some time. Gardner Minshew is a pro. He was able to step in. He threw for 155 passing yards, completed 11 of his 14 attempts. Zach Moss, in a game that returned Jonathan Taylor after getting extended to a 3-year deal, Zach Moss went crazy. He had 23 carries for 165 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. They now have a 3-2 record overall. And for the Tennessee Titans, Tannehill had an opportunity to win the game at the end, but of course threw an interception. Like I said before, he is the definition of mid, respectfully. That's really the best way I can say it. But yeah, Derrick Henry only had 43 rushing yards, so very pedestrian game from him. The Pittsburgh Steelers were able to beat the Baltimore Ravens, winning 17-10. The Ravens were winning this game in the first half and didn't play too bad, but they collapsed in the second half. Lamar Jackson had a turnover and an interception that really cost them. And then also, that defense, of course, is just crazy. Lamar Jackson also has had 7 fumbles throughout this year, losing 4 of those as well. So that's really a concern for the Ravens. And despite the Pittsburgh Steelers losing to the Texans last week and getting dominated, they're now the number 1 seed in the AFC North in that division with the Ravens, with the Bengals, with the Browns. So even with the Steelers offense having their woes and troubles with Matt Canada, every Pittsburgh Steelers fan wanting him fired, they're still holding on to that number 1 spot. And of course, we respect their defense being one of the best in the league always. But now this is really the best case scenario for the Steelers right now. And for the Ravens, they for sure have time to get things right and acclimated, of course, with first-year offensive coordinator Todd Monken from Georgia. But they better get stuff right ASAP. The Detroit Lions dominated the Carolina Panthers, winning 42-24. Not really surprising there. The Panthers are now the only winless team in the NFL. Jared Goff had a pretty good game, throwing for 236 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, really efficient. David Montgomery had 19 carries for 109 rushing yards and a touchdown. Jamison Williams returning this performance. It didn't go crazy, but it's going to be really nice to see him and Amon St. Brown as a receiver duo in Detroit. But of course, St. Brown didn't play in this game, and Jahmyr Gibbs didn't play in this game, but it was no problem for the Lions. And for Bryce Young, like I said last week, it's going to take him some time to develop in the NFL, of course, being a smaller quarterback too. But I still think that he's going to be really good and talented. Right now, I think it's a conversation to have as the Detroit Lions are the third best team in the NFC. We're going to talk about those other teams in Philadelphia and San Francisco later. But the Detroit Lions, they're looking really impressive. They now have a 4-1 record. So things are really looking up for them. And I think that they'll easily win the NFC North at this point. The Atlanta Falcons narrowly beat the Houston Texans, winning 21-19. Still impressed with CJ Stroud in terms of his poise as a quarterback, as a rookie as well. Still not having a turnover yet. And he broke Dak Prescott's record of most completion attempts without having an interception. So props to him. For sure, I think the leading candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He had 249 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Desmond Ridder was able to redeem himself after having a bad game against the Jaguars last week. He had 329 passing yards and a touchdown, completing 28 out of his 37 passing attempts. Looked really good. The Falcons, of course, have Bijan Robinson, had a receiving touchdown as well. Kyle Pitts was able to get more involved, having 87 receiving yards and 7 receptions. Both of these teams played a tough and gritty game, but the Falcons were able to persevere. And for the Texans, of course, me being a Houstonian, not a fan of the Texans, but a fan of CJ Stroud and everything that he stands for, of course, being a Christian and how he always keeps God first. They really have a franchise quarterback going there and a great leader in Houston. The Miami Dolphins cooked the New York Giants, winning 31-16. The game was closer in the first half, but the Dolphins were able to wake up in the second half and just put things away. Daniel Jones did leave the game with a neck injury, and we'll see how severe that is going forward. But I just think that this season so far has been a wash for the Giants, and that we're seeing them truly regress in real fashion. And their schedule isn't going to get any easier, so I think they have the potential to have a really high pick going into the 2024 NFL Draft. But talking about the Miami Dolphins, though, Tua Tagovailoa, he had a solid game. He did have 2 interceptions, but he threw for 308 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that right now, you can say that him, Josh Allen, and even Brock Purdy, which we'll talk about later, are the leading candidates for the MVP right now. And then also Devon Achane, a really good rookie. I think he's playing phenomenal football. He had 11 carries for 151 rushing yards and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill being one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the game. He had 8 receptions and 181 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. Dolphins, they're definitely in there for one of the favorites to represent the AFC for the Super Bowl. The Cincinnati Bengals were able to get some rhythm going between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase as they beat the Arizona Cardinals 34-20. They now have a 2-3 record, and Jamar Chase went crazy. He had 15 receptions for 192 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns after just in the previous week being mad about not getting the ball. This was really a breakthrough game for the Bengals and for Jamar and Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow said that he felt great going into this game. Completed 36 out of his 46 passing attempts for 317 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. So the Bengals, they're starting to get their rhythm back. I feel like they are definitely going to be one of the best teams in the AFC. Just sometimes it takes time to get adjusted to every season. We saw that with them last year, starting off 0-2. And of course, Joe Burrow had a little calf injury, which I think that will see him manage throughout the whole season. But they'll still have something to say about the AFC being one of the best teams in the AFC for sure. This was a really good game in Los Angeles between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams, and Cooper Kupp did return in the game, so going forward with him, Matthew Stafford, and Puka Nacua, that's going to be a really good dynamic in Los Angeles. But it wasn't enough against the Eagles, as they are now 5-0, winning the game 23-14. Jalen Hurts had 303 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Also had a rushing touchdown and 72 rushing yards. Looked really good, and he was able to connect with A.J. Brown for 6 receptions and 127 receiving yards. The Eagles, they're starting to get back on their rhythm as well. Talking about how the Bengals were. The Eagles made the Super Bowl last year, so everyone knows that they're one of the best teams in the league for sure. One of the best 2 teams in the NFC, which we'll talk about soon. And on the other side, Matthew Stafford and the Rams, they're looking really good. Of course, after struggling last year, being injured and things of that nature, no one's really blaming them for losing this game against the Eagles. Like I said, that dynamic between Stafford, Nacua, and Cooper Kupp is going to be really good. I mean, Cooper Kupp, his first game back, he didn't miss a beat, had 8 receptions and 118 receiving yards. The Rams, I for sure think that they'll make the playoffs, probably as a wild card because we know the 49ers, how great they are. The Rams, they're back on track, I would say. The New York Jets beat the Denver Broncos 31-21. A game that really the New York Jets were up for. Nathaniel Hackett, who was the coach for the Broncos last year, of course, is not an offensive coordinator in New York. Sean Payton said that stuff about the Broncos having the worst coaching job last year. Really was able to humble Sean Payton in this game, losing to them. I think that words are important, and what you say, it'll come back to bite you, and we're seeing that happen with the Broncos. They're now 1-4, and at least Nathaniel Hackett had the Broncos at 2-3 last year at this point, so it's just really blowing up in Denver. Their defense sucks now after being one of their strong suits the past couple of years. It's really a tough situation. But also, shout out to Zach Wilson. He's had a solid past couple of weeks, of course, in the game last week against the Chiefs in week 4. And then in week 5 in this game against the Broncos, he completed 19 out of his 26 passing attempts, had 199 passing yards. He did have an interception, but I think that he's going to continue to get more comfortable. And he even said himself that he finally believed that someone believed in him and Nathaniel Hackett. So the Jets, I feel like they can still be a wild card and maybe make the playoffs. Of course, in their division, they have the Dolphins and the Bills, so it's going to be tough. And with the Broncos, I expect them to miss the playoffs. They play against the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football going into week 6. It's just going to be rough for them for sure. Speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, they were able to beat the Minnesota Vikings 27-20 on Sunday. The Chiefs are now 4-1. Patrick Mahomes did Patrick Mahomes things, of course, completing 31 of his 41 passing attempts, had 281 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Travis Kelce, at first we thought that he looked injured after he caught a reception and just falling down, but thankfully he wasn't. He had 67 receiving yards and 1 touchdown even after what appeared to be an ankle injury. And Isaiah Pacheco also had a touchdown as well. Kirk Cousins on the other end had 284 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. You know, honestly, even though the Vikings haven't been doing good this year, Kirk Cousins has been playing good football. He's been electric. I think that he for sure is a top 10 quarterback, which we'll talk about soon because I have a lot to say about the Sunday Night Football game that we'll talk about next. But Kirk Cousins, I think that with the Vikings not extending him and him being a free agent next season, it's going to be interesting for a team that'll need a veteran quarterback that might just be a quarterback away from potentially contending for a Super Bowl. He'll be able to help them next year in 2024. We also saw Justin Jefferson go out with a hamstring injury. We don't know how severe it is yet, but hopefully he isn't too crazy. But for the Vikings, I don't know. Do you blow it up? Do you just tank going into the rest of the year, especially with Justin Jefferson out? That's an interesting question that we'll see go forward. All right, and now we have to talk about Sunday Night Football. And really, of course, on this channel, I try to keep things objective as possible because I do want to be a sports analyst going into the future. You have to be objective, but sometimes you just have to be real, and I have to talk about it. So for a while on my channel, I have been trying to hide who my favorite team is because, of course, you know, people have a lot to say about this team. Of course, the Dallas Cowboys, yeah, they are my favorite team. And I'm not one of those Cowboys fans that's just, you know, super emotional, always talking about they're going to win a Super Bowl. Like, I'm very realistic. Like, I was born in 2002. I've never seen this team win anything significant, which is true. But I'm a realist, of course, and I didn't expect this team to be Super Bowl contenders, but for sure be a playoff contender. And like I said on other videos, it all comes down to Dak Prescott. And we saw that, man, if that's the case, the Cowboys are screwed. They're cooked every single definition in the book because they got 30-balled, losing 42-10 against the 49ers. I think for sure easily the 49ers are the best team in the league. Only them and now the Eagles are the only undefeated teams in the league right now. Like, they're just a complete team. And talking about Brock Purdy real quick before I go in on Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, he's for sure an MVP candidate. Like, in his second year, being 10-0 as a starter, of course, not including that game against Philadelphia, which he got injured. He's been great. He's so poised. We talk about poise with CJ Stroud. I think Brock Purdy is for sure the definition of that. He's not the most talented. He's not the biggest quarterback, but he's just very intelligent. He's able to get through his reads, his checkdowns so fast. Like, really props to him. And also, he's a man of God, man of faith. Always talks about his faith as well. So I really respect that about him. So shout out to the 49ers. They played a really great game. Of course, having George Kittle also had 3 touchdowns in the game as well. Playing really great. Of course, being one of the best tight ends in the game. No one's surprised about that. Christian McCaffrey was able to attack the Cowboys in the past game as well. Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, they just really played a complete game, and that defense is incredible too. Talk about Fred Warner, talk about Nick Bosa, Hargrave, just they have a lot of weapons on the defensive end for the 49ers. But yeah, I hate to spend so much time on this game, guys. Like I said, I'm going to be objective going into the future, but it's really hard for me not to just talk about it as like somewhat of a Cowboys fan right now. I'm acting very emotional right now, I know, but like, bro, it's bad. Like, it is bad. Like, 3 straight interceptions in 3 possessions. That's pretty embarrassing, dude. I've tried to talk about how solid of a quarterback as he is, like, which we'll talk about. I mean, he is solid, but can you really win with him? That's a big question. And if you're the Cowboys, do you continue to just play with this? Like, you have a good enough team to make the playoffs and things of that nature, maybe win 1 playoff game, but you're going to lose in the second round. Like, that's just what happens. So is that enough? Like, I feel like if I'm a GM or a part of a team or even a fan, like, I'd rather be trash and try to rebuild for something better in the future than just constantly have these little playoff seasons where you just lose in the first round. Like, that's just bad, honestly. And then they're not getting people involved like Brandon Cooks, who you traded for. CeeDee Lamb only had 49 receiving yards. Tony Pollard only had 29 rushing yards, and he had a fumble as well. So it's really tough. It's a lot of questions for the Cowboys. Like I said, I do feel like they'll be in the playoffs, but potentially even losing in the first round. It's really tough to say that, but let's just be real and call it what it is. The 49ers are the best team in the league, and the Cowboys, they might be the 5th or 6th best team in the NFC alone. Moving on to the final game in Week 5, that was a matchup on Monday Night Football between the Green Bay Packers and the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Raiders were able to win 17-13. The Packers are now 2-3, and the Raiders are now also 2-3. Jordan Love, after playing a solid first 3 games, he's been struggling through the past few weeks. He had 3 interceptions alone in his performance, really bad, but I think there's still hope in Green Bay. Of course, this is his first year as a full starter, so I think that he'll only continue to get better. His completion percentage is only at 56%, which isn't good, but you have to go through that growing pains for sure. And I think that the Packers are still a solid team, but they weren't able to win against the Raiders, and the Raiders needed this win as well. Jimmy Garoppolo, I would say he had a solid game. He did throw his annual interception that he throws, and he's leading the league in interceptions right now so far this season, throwing 7 in total. But that was a good win for the Raiders. Alright, so before wrapping up this video, we can just talk about a couple things that we learned from this week. First of all, I want to talk about injuries. It really sucks to see Justin Jefferson out with a hamstring injury. Just saw today that Adam Schefter reported that he's going to be on injured reserve, so he's for sure missing the next 4 games, so that's very tough. But also beyond that, talking about teams and things of that nature, the contenders like we know right now, like I said, the 49ers, they're for sure the best team in the league. Eagles, in terms of NFC, I would say the second best team. If you want to talk about AFC, it's a coin flip between the Dolphins, between the Bills, who did dominate the Dolphins, but they lost to the Jaguars, and then of course the Chiefs are always in there. But talking about the Cowboys a little bit more, it's still early in the year, so I'll give them a chance for sure, and Dak, he can play better. I guess the fortunate thing about it is that it's week 5 and not week 17, but they're going to have to come with it for sure. And Dak is certainly someone you can win with, but everything has to be right. And I probably was a little bit harsh earlier. Just being critical and just being objective, it's going to be tough because that quarterback position, a lot of times in the playoffs and in the big games, that's what is the difference for a lot of teams, that difference maker. And of course, the Cowboys defense is really good, but after Trayvon Diggs got hurt, they went from being number 1 in pass defense to being 30th. Like, that's a significant drop off, so that's very huge. So the Cowboys, they're going to have to get things right. Fortunately, it's week 5, and like I say, you really can't tell how great teams are going to be until week 7, week 8, around that nature or something like that. So that's what to evaluate from there. With that being said though, guys, let me know what y'all think in the comments down below, how you think the season is going so far. I appreciate you guys watching. Always make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at SwaggyRuss, and also on TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for cooking videos, shorts, and things of that nature. More videos are on the way. Stay tuned. Hope that this season goes by slow because love football for sure. Stay tuned for more NBA videos as well. The season is starting soon. Thank God later this month. A lot of things on the way, guys. Y'all stay tuned. Be blessed and y'all have a good one.